Alô.
Bom dia.
Good
Bom
morning,
dia, senhoras e senhores.
ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Citrus
Sejam
Defense
todos
Fund,
muito bem-vindos.
be
Iniciamos a
welcome.
cerimônia de
We will
anúncio
start our
da estimativa da
ceremony
safra
of
de laranja
the announcement of
2017-18
the
do Parque Citrícola de São Paulo,
2017-2018 orange
Minas Gerais.
forecast for the São Paulo and southwest of Minas Gerais citrus belt. And for this institution is the opportunity to reflect upon the vision projected 4 decades ago by citrus growers, in which consolidated into a world reference institution to support the development of one of the most modern competitive citrus growing regions in the world. Within this premise, an innovative strategy and a bold initiative met the demand of the sector by implementing the production forecast research PES that allows the knowledge of the citrus growing profile, the forecast and the follow-up of the harvest, and Fundecitrus carries out the forecast of orange production of Brazil's main producing region. This announcing event will be carried out as follows: the crop announcement, a presentation with the production data and the profile of growths done by Fundecitrus General Manager Juliano Aires, and a Q&A session. We would like to acknowledge and thank the presence of the São Paulo State Agriculture Supply Secretary, Mr. Arnaldo Jardim, Fernando Cury, State Representative, and the other invitees. The results of the inventory and stripping survey of the trees obtained along the research were restricted up to today to professionals linked to Fundecitrus, the General Manager of Fundecitrus, PES supervisors, and the partners of institutions cooperating with the research, namely Marquestrat, Unesp, Jabuticabal, and FEA Ribeirão Preto, all of them subject to the terms of confidentiality regarding the information of PES up to its announcement to the public, according to the terms of confidentiality signed between each one of them and Fundecitrus. The crop numbers were only consolidated at a meeting held this morning. To start the announcement, we would like to make up the floor the São Paulo State Agriculture Secretary, Dr. Arnaldo Jardim. Please be welcome. The President of Fundecitrus, Dr. Lorival Carmo Mônaco. The General Manager of Fundecitrus, Juliano Aires. The Political, Institutional, and Methodological Coordinator of PES, Mr. Marcos Fava Neves. The Executive Coordinator, Vinícius Gustavo Trombin. And the latter from Marquestrat, and Unesp Professor and Coordinator of the Statistics Area, Professor José Carlos Barbosa. We would also like to call PES supervisors Fernando Delgado, Roseli Reina, and Renato Rovaroto to hold their seats at the auditorium.
Sejam todos muito bem-vindos. Podemos
be welcome.
Sim. Neste momento,
at this moment, I'd like to invite Fundecitrus Chairman Dr. Lorival Carmo Mônaco to announce the 2017-2018 orange crop forecast. Good morning, everybody. I would like to thank for your presence and that carried out all this work and preserving this information in a confidential confidentiality manner. I've just received the information, and the crop was much better this year, but it is still close to the average of the last 10 years, and considering the low inventory situation, it's a year of good expectations for citrus growing industry. I've just taken this number not to make the same mistake as that the Oscar announcing, but I wrote that. The forecast for the crop for 2017-2018 is 364,470,000 boxes, a total trees of 174 million trees. Roughly no change in the tree population. The average of year, considering the low yield in the last 2 or 3 years, it is 14% above the 10-year average. So this is a figure that we think is highly reliable, because the estimates for the last few years was very close to the actual number. And finally, I would like to thank the presence of the Secretary. He is the most important person here, and your presence here. And I hope that with the announcement of Juliana, we will present the facts. The interpretation of the facts will depend on each one of you and not on us. Thank you very much.
Nós vamos exibir vídeo agora.
Now we are going to present a video. I would like you to invite you either to take your seats or remain here, whatever fits you best.
Sem precedentes na história do setor.
Estamos lançando a terceira edição da estimativa de safra do Brasil, particularmente a região de São Paulo e Minas. Sem dúvida nenhuma, é o resultado de um esforço significativo dos produtores para se defender e se proteger das variações e das oscilações do mercado.
Respeitada pela grande credibilidade que conquistou, a PES 2017 é resultado de um trabalho monumental, que mobilizou 120 profissionais, exigiu a colaboração de diferentes organizações e contou com a cooperação de mais de 1.000 produtores. Para realizar as visitas de 2017, as equipes de campo percorreram 500 mil quilômetros, o equivalente a mais de 10 voltas no planeta. A atualização do número de árvores exigiu a visita a 2.625 pomares, para verificar os índices de crescimento e retração do parque citrícola. Para apurar o número de laranjas por árvore, é feita a colheita das plantas. Nesta edição da PES, foi realizada a derriça em mais de 2.500 laranjeiras, cujos frutos foram separados por florada, contados e pesados. A quantidade de frutos por árvore multiplicada pelo número de plantas produtivas serve de base para o cálculo da estimativa total da safra de laranja.
Com esse trabalho do Fundecitrus, eu consigo saber o que eu vou produzir e o que o Parque Citrícola no estado de São Paulo vai produzir.
Tão relevante quanto a rigorosa execução das etapas da pesquisa é o contínuo aprimoramento das suas próprias metodologias. No ano de 2017, a PES contou com 2 inovações desenvolvidas pelo próprio Fundecitrus, que tornaram os processos ainda mais eficientes e confiáveis. A primeira delas é um novo dispositivo que substitui o modo analógico e a categorização das árvores de um mesmo talhão em até 4 faixas etárias. Para complementar esse novo método, é feita a colheita das replantas que já atingiram a idade adulta, o que promove precisão ainda maior para a estimativa, já que a idade é um fator determinante para a produtividade da planta. A segunda inovação implantada na PES 2017 foi o novo sistema de pagamentos para ressarcir o citricultor pela derriça das árvores. Um formulário online permite que o produtor se cadastre e resgate o valor com mais praticidade e segurança. Isso fortalece o diálogo entre o Fundecitrus e o citricultor e garante maior controle dos processos de pesquisa. Além disso, ao longo da safra, é realizado um acompanhamento mensal em 900 talhões, monitorando a taxa e os motivos da queda e o tamanho dos frutos. Com a PES, todos os elos da cadeia produtiva se fortalecem, pois podem contar com dados mais precisos sobre a safra e a evolução dos pomares. A pesquisa também democratiza as informações para todos os agentes do setor por meio de uma estimativa pública, transparente e confiável. A pesquisa de estimativa de safra não se restringe a mapear o presente do agronegócio do citrus. Ela projeta os novos horizontes do setor e constrói uma cadeia produtiva mais sólida, próspera e sustentável. A execução da pesquisa só é possível graças à cooperação de todos os elos do setor. Afinal, a força da citricultura está em nossas mãos. Fundecitrus, há 40 anos referência mundial em ciência e tecnologia para a citricultura. Mundial em ciência.
Bom, esse vídeo ele resumiu bem, né, as metodologias que
This
foram
was a good summary of
empregadas,
the
né,
methodologies
tecnologias empregadas no
used
trabalho para chegar ao número, né, que
to
foi
reach
anunciado
the
pelo
number that
Dr.
has just
Mônaco.
been announced.
Agora, eu passo a palavra para o senhor
I'd
Juliano
like to hand
Aires,
the floor to
ele é
the
gerente-geral do
Mr.
Fundecitrus
Juliano Aires,
e vai apresentar os números
General Manager
do
of
inventário de
Fundecitrus,
árvores
who will
e o
present
perfil
the numbers
atualizado
of
do Parque
trees
Citrícola.
inventory and the actual profile of the citrus growing industry.
Gostaria de, mais uma vez, em
I
nome
would
do
like,
Fundecitrus,
once again,
agradecer a
on behalf
presença
of
de todos,
Fundecitrus, to thank for
em
your
especial
presence
os
here,
agricultores,
especially the citrus
nosso secretário,
growers,
Dr. Arnaldo Jardim,
our
que muito
secretary,
tem feito
Dr.
pelo agrobusiness, pela citricultura. Nós
Jardim,
temos
who
também
has
a
done a
presença
lot
do
for citrus growing industry,
deputado Fernando Cury, que
and,
também é do setor
State Representative
agrícola, né? Os representantes
Cury,
da secretaria aqui,
and
Mário
the
Tomazella, o
representatives
Fernando
of
Buchala,
the Secretariat,
e, enfim, Citrus BR, Biapaba, e todos vocês que são as pessoas que fazem da instituição que ela é, né, que nesse ano está completando 40 anos. Estou com a missão de apresentar os números que foram fechados recentemente, agora na sala de reunião, com a presença do comitê, né, E nós
half an
vamos
hour
estar
ago
atualizando o
by the
inventário de
committee, and we
árvores
will
e
update
também
the trees
os
inventory
detalhes, as
and
premissas
also
que
the
levaram
details and
a
the
esse número
assumptions
final.
that
Depois
led
da minha
to this
apresentação,
final
eu
figure.
gosto sempre de deixar
And
a
after
parte mais difícil
my
para os
presentation,
meus colegas. E
I will leave
o
the
Sr.
hardest
Barbosa não vai ficar na
part
vida
to
boa.
my
Então vou deixar
colleagues.
ele para
I would like
conduzir a questão da
him to lead the statistical data,
Estou muito seguro desse número para explicar para vocês e depois nós vamos
and then
para a sessão de
we will open for the Q&A session, and then the final word by the State Secretary.
Então, acho que foi bem
So-
colocado pelo Dr. Mônaco. O sítio da Laranjeira, ela existe
The
uma variabilidade.
orange tree has a lot of variability in terms of yield. It has high correlation with the weather and with the previous year's production. So
Se a
this
gente analisar em relação às
season
últimas 4
or
safras, elas
harvest
estão
as
um pouco acima da
related
média,
to the last
mas,
4 crops is a little
como nós temos
above.
safras muito pequenas, praticamente
But
hoje não tem estoque de
Today we have
suco. É uma
roughly
safra que
no
provavelmente ela
juice
vem
inventory,
a somar tanto
and
o
it
agricultor
will
quanto a
add
na medida
both
que
to
nós
the
temos
citrus
condições
grower and to the
melhores,
industry
para os agricultores
to
e para o
have
próprio
better
setor industrial.
conditions, both for the citrus
Essa
growers and the
bianualidade, ela é
industrial
normal,
plants.
não só de citro,
So
mas de outras
it,
frutíferas, do café, e é uma
it
coisa
also,
bem esperada, porque nós temos uma condição muito
something that
favorável
was
do ponto de vista do
expected
clima.
both
No ano de
for citrus and
2016,
coffee.
o florescimento
In the
foi
year
muito exuberante, o
2016, we
pegamento
had a
depois
lot
também.
of
E agora nós estamos na fase de
bloom
desenvolvimento da
and
fruta, que
setting,
ainda
and
tem
now the
fatores
fruit
que vão
is still
interferir, que é o
developing,
tamanho,
and also
a queda,
the
que nós vamos
size
estar comentando a seguir.
and the
Então,
droppage.
essa reunião nossa, nós vamos
So
estar
this
atualizando o inventário
meeting,
de árvores.
we
Esse trabalho tem
will
sido
update
feito
the trees
anualmente,
inventory,
e a cada 3 anos nós
and
temos uma varredura.
every 3 years we
Esse ano
have
nós vamos entrar na
a
fase que nós vamos
so-called
ter a fotografia no detalhe,
scanning
com a
or
lupa, né?
sweeping
Tanto com a
with a
fotografia de
magnifying
satélite
glass,
como o trabalho
both
de campo.
with
E vamos estar
the
colocando as
satellite
premissas que
data
levaram
and
essa
field
safra de
survey,
364 milhões de
which led to
Importante
this
dizer que esse trabalho ele é feito arduamente, foi
figure.
muito grande,
This is
bem
a work
treinada, e
done
nós
by
tivemos
a big
esse ano
team, and today
praticamente
we
a
had
adesão de todos os
roughly
agricultores.
all the
Não,
citrus
resistência
growers
nenhuma,
adherence.
de poder
We
fazer
had
essa
no
premissa.
resistance at
Isso
all
foi
in
uma
terms
vitória
of
no primeiro momento,
stripping,
de resistência.
because
O
at
agricultor, na
in the
verdade,
beginning there
abriu
was
as
some
portas do
resistance,
tecido.
but now
Isso é uma coisa que eu
all
queria deixar
citrus
agradecimento à
growers
instituição.
open up
E
their
um trabalho
farms
muito
to
árduo, né?
Fundecitrus,
Mais de 500 mil
and
quilômetros
more
foram
than
feitos em 3 meses, tem que ser feito em tempo muito curto.
5,000 kilometers in 3
Existe
months.
dentro desse comitê para
There
garantir a
is,
isenção.
in order
E a
to
gente
ensure
contar com o
the
know-how, a experiência,
confidentiality
setor,
and total
representantes
impartiality,
da indústria,
representatives of citrus
da
growers,
universidade,
of
da-
orange juice
da
companies,
USP, da Mark Strat,
and from the
Dr. Barbosa.
universities and Marcus Trott,
base nesse trabalho
and
todo,
based
que a gente
on
coleta,
that
a gente
work,
chega no número. Nós tivemos
we
também o
collect
apoio da
this
Secretaria,
final number. We had the
Agricultura, da
support
CDA,
from
mais
the
especificamente também,
São Paulo State
a
Agriculture
quantificação do que foi
Secretariat
plantado em
to
2016.
quantify
Foi
what
bastante
has been
importante para nós.
planted in
Gostaria de deixar nosso
2016.
agradecimento
I would like
secretário,
to
né?
then thank
Aqui
the
pouco a
Agriculture
distribuição,
Secretary.
como está a citricultura, né?
The distribution of
Nós temos
what
citros, praticamente,
citrus
na grande maioria
growing
dos
industries
municípios,
like in
348 municípios do
348 municipalities of the state of São Paulo,
agora a gente tem
and
cerca de
socially,
400 mil
although we have
hectares,
400,000
uma das culturas que
hectares,
mais
it's
empregam.
one of the
grande apelo
highest
do mundo e do Brasil
employing
hoje é a
industries,
empregabilidade. Por isso,
because employability
secretário,
is a
deputado,
top
Fernando,
factor
nós
here.
precisamos de vocês.
So we
nós temos que
need
enfrentar o
you
problema
a
de
lot because we have to face the sanitation, greening, and citrus canker problems, counting on
Então, aqui
the
pouco
Agriculture
aconteceu
Secretariat
nesses últimos anos.
work.
Houve
This
uma
is
retração
what happened the
muito
last few
forte
years. There was a
2015 para
a
2016,
strong decrease
a
from
distribuição de árvores,
2015 to
foi se erradicou,
2016,
uma pequena queda
and a small drop,
provavelmente em função
maybe due to better prices, and the eradication was decreased. We had a 7% decrease
produtividade vocês vão
in
ver,
2 years,
de
but
forma
the
geral, ela tem uma
productivity,
tendência de incremento. Então, o que
it has this
aconteceu
trend
nesses
to
setores,
increase.
nessas cinco
What happened in
distintas
these
regiões?
5
Vocês
different
observam
areas?
que
You
daquele
can
número lá de
observe that from that
5% foi a redução,
5%,
houve, com exceção da região sudoeste, que é uma região
except
nova,
for the
da
southwest
região de
region in
Itapetininga,
Avaré, Itapetininga, and Santa Cruz do Rio Pardo,
diminuiu só 1%,
it
as outras
decreased
oscilaram,
only
é,
1%.
11 a
The
5%.
others
As
oscillated
duas regiões
from
que mais houve decréscimo da área de cítrus
around
foi a
the
região centro,
11%, and the greatest variation was in the
região de
center,
Brotas,
where we had the highest
Salvador,
greening
Matão,
influence, Brotas,
Itápolis,
Matão, Itápolis. There
grande a
was
região
a high
noroeste,
decrease,
onde
and the
as menores
northwest,
produtividade do estado,
where we had the
que mais
lowest
sofreram
production, and
com o
which
efeito
were
da seca.
the ones that
Tá?
suffered
As outras
most
regiões
with the
norte,
drought, and
sudoeste,
with the
sul,
north,
por exemplo,
south,
estão
and
praticamente dentro da média.
regions are within the
Aconteceu em
average.
termos de árvores
What happened in
adultas
terms
e
of
árvores
adult trees and
na faixa etária
young
improdutiva,
trees
menor de 2 anos, ou
with
acima
less
de
than
3 anos.
2 years or
Nosso
above
parque tem
3 years?
envelhecido,
Our
e hoje nós
citrus
estamos
area
nos
has
últimos
gotten
5 anos com
old,
decréscimo
and
sensível
in the
de
last
produtividade.
5 years we have had a significant decrease in planting of citrus.
Nós tínhamos em 94,
In 1994, we had 94% in 2015, and this year we have 96 adult growth. So the stock, the inventory of trees has decreased in the last few years. What happened in terms of adult growths? Here you can see that there was a decrease from 2015 to 2017 between what was planted and what was eradicated, almost
que a gente tem que estar atento, embora a gente
200,000
tenha uma safra maior,
hectares.
o número de árvores tem
The
diminuído.
number has decreased, although we have a larger
Detalhes também,
crop.
em termos de
In terms of
pomares em formação,
groves being formed,
quantitativamente, o
in
número de plantas
percentage-wise and quantity-wise, the number of trees planted in the last 2 years was slower than the
tanto de pomar
other
adulto como
previous 2
pomares
years.
mais jovens. Por isso,
That's
que a área
why
vem caindo.
the area has been decreasing. The number of trees decreased a little less because the density is higher.
Então, em detalhes,
Planting density is higher.
2016,
And so in 2016 we had 28,000 hectares that were eradicated, and now an additional 14,000. But to our surprise, part of the groves that were semi-abandoned, with the increase of orange price, citrus growers tried to reactivate their groves. So out of 6.5 thousand hectares,
voltou-se a cuidar mesmo com
they
as
resumed their crop care
cuidados, então, e a área de renovação foi
or
maior.
cultural traits, and so there was a reduction of 2.4 thousand hectares. Here in 2016,
Passado, que era de 6
we had
hectares abandonados,
6.5 thousand hectares abandoned,
acima de 9 mil hectares. Somente 2 mil
and
hectares.
in this
Muito pouco.
year is only 2,000
Era o Parque Citrícola
hectares. It is very small. It's
além, evidentemente, quintais,
0.5%.
condomínios e cidades onde nós temos principalmente a questão do inóculo do gringo.
And
É uma boa notícia.
this is good news, and proportionally, citrus growers in this new stage
Cuidado de todo o Parque Citrícola de forma geral.
is taking care of all these factors. And remember that the greening was detected in the state of São Paulo in 2004, July,
que a partir desse
and
momento, principalmente
since
a partir
then,
de 2009,
after 2009, there was a strong trend to try to get a higher density planting because we know that the eradication of the disease, the plant, is one of the stages. So the citrus grower trying to obtain a better return of its investment and increased yield, it has increased the planting density. And this year is 600,
no futuro vão ter uma densidade muito maior.
the density of 476. So there will be a higher density of plants per hectare.
Bom, um pouco. A gente tem duas formas de olhar
Here
isso.
we have two ways of analyzing these: number of hectares and number of trees. Number of trees, the total adult plants, 197 to 191. However, when we analyze the number of productive trees, bearing trees, we had 23, and this year 16. So we have 8 million less trees producing. And the number of bearing trees is roughly the same. Remember the density factor here. What happened in terms of age bracket? The percentage of plants at each age bracket, that gives us greater assurance to estimate or forecast our crops, because in previous years we used an average and we were not analyzing the different strata, because a 10-year-old groves, you have 8-year-old, 3-year-old, 6-year-old plants, and so the committee decided to make an analysis of 6 strata. You have the conventional ones, the 3 to 5, 5 to 10, etc. And within those blocks, you have the strata of replants or resets. So the number of fruits per tree of 753, this is an average of all those 6 strata. So all those details will be available next Friday on the detailed report, and as of now there will be a summary of everything we are publishing now. This was basically what we arrived at in terms of tree inventories for the 2017-18 crop season. And how did we get to this 364 million boxes of oranges? So the equation we use, and we are adjusting this equation similar to what is being done in Florida. So you have the number of bearing trees, we check that on fruit per tree, we weighed 6 strata, and we are quite sure of this number. Barbosa will show the consistency in statistical terms. The droppage rate we adopted for this year, it is higher than the average for the 2 previous years, because we have a year of more number of fruit. There is greater severity of greening, so we are forecasting a higher droppage rate as compared to before. Another important factor is the fruit size, that is, fruit per box. Since it's a number with a larger number of fruit per tree, and we had 2 years of lower crops, there is a general trend, using all the history within São Paulo citrus industry and citrus growers. We will have smaller fruit, maybe a better yield for the industry. And there is a correction factor that is used, which is what you cannot explain. It's the difference of density, plants that died in that year, and then we have the average of the last 2 years. So this number They are quite consistent and conservative figures. Here we have the assumptions, what we forecast. This is the average of all the regions in all the age brackets. Of course, the early season ones are the most productive ones. Pera is the one with the least production, and the late varieties like Valencia, we have a number of fruits per variety. Now, fruits per tree per age group of trees. Using those 6 strata, from 3 to 5 years, we have an average fruit size of 400. Now, from 6 to 10 years is 718 in green, and in resets, productivity or yield decreases a lot. Greening gives a reduced production because today we have 12% resets in bearing groves. And when the block is older than 10 years, then we have the average productivity for that situation. This was an innovation that gives us greater assurance of being closer to the reality. What happened in terms of bloom and percentage fruit? It's a distribution where the first bloom is prevailing with 73%. The second one has an important factor, 18%. And the third and fourth bloom is slightly lower than the previous years, around 10%. So that's the average of those varieties. Of course, this changes from region to region and age bracket, but this number has statistical consistency. How is this distributed? This is the most important chart for us to determine the crop size. Bearing trees, 174 million trees. Fruit per tree at stripping, average is 753. It's the bottom line. And then the late ones are intermediate, and the mid-season is smallest. Fruit forecast per box, the early ones, since there is a higher load, they have a smaller size. The mid-season and the late ones between 350 and 360, giving us an average of 265 fruit per box. The droppage rate, the number was close to 14%. Historically, this number is around 17. Since this is a larger number of fruit per box, we are forecasting a 1.5 droppage rate above the average. Productivity was around 2 boxes per tree, production per tree, and yield is close to 945 boxes per hectare, especially due to the number of fruit, even with the higher droppage rate and smaller fruit size. This is a good crop. If you take all this into account, we will have 364 million boxes. And after that, we will be able to have some discussion, and Barbosa will also help clarify a few points that ensure the statistical reliability of these numbers. You will receive this executive summary, and Vinicius is still working on this. And until Friday, you have all these data. And then these numbers will be
ao longo da safra.
slowly corrected along the harvest, and we have rainfall and temperature and the effect of pests and diseases that may affect this number up or down, and we will close this figure for 2018. I would like to thank everybody for your presence here, and before closing this, today we are
Esse mês, ano da perda do nosso grande mentor da
we
instituição.
have lost the great mentor of our institution 1 year ago,
Toda vez que ele estava
that every time he was with our committee, because the world's largest citrus
eu acho que o Fundecitrus tem
association,
perseguido essa
Mr.
orientação cada dia mais
Joseph
definindo
Marie
novos
Beauvais,
papéis, não só na área de transferência de
not only in terms
pesquisa,
of
agora
technology and
papéis,
research
de
transfer,
tecnologia, e nós
biotechnology,
estamos atuando cada dia mais
and we
próximo
must
do governo.
work
Mais
closer
próximo
and
de nós,
closer
maior
to
que
the
o
government
Eu
and
queria
to
agradecer
the
também ao Dr.
State
Monaco, que
Department.
há
I would
muitos
like
anos aí
to
tem sido o nosso grande líder.
thank Dr. Monaco, our big leader, and Fundecitrus. Without
Essa oportunidade
this
tem feito a
opportunity
diferença para a instituição.
has
Nós
made
temos feito
the
um trabalho
biggest
brilhante,
difference.
então,
Dr. Monaco has
tem nos
had a
ajudado
brilliant
com a sua
work with his
Então, eu
experience.
passaria agora
Now,
todas aquelas dúvidas
all
mais
those
difíceis de perguntar
more
para mim, não.
difficult questions, please
Barbosa,
ask
que gosta dos números, né?
Barbosa, who likes the figures,
Protocolo, Barbosa.
and
Você
Barbosa,
ajude a
breaking the
complementar
protocol, please
a apresentação.
complement
Já termina com essas dúvidas antes
this
das
and
perguntas. Obrigado.
clarify the doubts before they even ask the questions. Thank you.
Bom dia a todos.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure
Da safra
to participate in this announcement of the citrus crop,
como é mais relacionado com
since it's more related to statistics. I won't
como foi feita a
take too much of your time, so bear with me, please.
Bom, esse slide aí, ele está mostrando
This
cada uma
slide
das
shows
árvores
each
derriçadas.
of the stripped trees
Até número 2553.
from 2,553. We had 2.5 thousand trees that were stripped.
Nessa, cada ponto desse é
So
uma árvore.
each dot here
Eu fiz
is a
aí, eu
tree. So
coloquei
what did I
aí o
do?
desvio da média do
The
extrato.
deviation of the average stratum average. If I just put the number of tree of fruits per tree, what I did, I subtracted the stratum average and I placed the strata deviation here, two standard deviations. What does this chart show? First,
Faixa de variação de menos 2
that
desvios a
the,
mais 2 desvios, vai incluindo aqui os 90%
two standard deviation range above or below is 95% of the sampling technique, which is according to normal statistics.
Até aqui,
Additionally,
inicialmente a gente ainda, quando nós dimensionamos
when
lá
we
atrás, nós
sized
dimensionamos
the
pra em torno de
sampling,
2% de
we
erro no número de frutos por árvore.
included 2% error
Então, inicialmente nós tiramos essas duas
in
vezes
the
dessa
sampling.
amostra.
So initially we took this 2.5 thousand trees, and then we considered the resets, and then we added 360 samples to reset to estimate the number of trees. So blocks 3 years old with resets, they have 1 year old and 2 year old resets.
E o talhão de idade 1 só tem idade 1.
And the block with 1-year-old reset is only for 1-year-old resets. The variability of original trees is much higher than the variability of resets, as expected, because they are younger and they give fewer fruit. If we assess this sampling, the sample is highly representative, as expected for a normal distribution. Since we took the average is 0. So this is the average of the deviations, standard deviations, which is always 0. Here is minus 1,500 plus 1,500. Here we have the normal distribution we obtained with the sampling, and here the average of fruits per tree, 753. The standard deviation is 360. The confidence level is 14, which means that this average is 753. It might be 753 minus 14 or plus 14. So minus is the minimum number. If I add 14, I will have the upper limit with 95% of confidence. This gives a 1.9 error margin. But we had sized for 2,200, but we eventually used 2,600, which gives us greater reliability. Therefore, the estimated error is as shown. Basically, in terms of sampling, this shows the reliability of the number of fruits per tree. As regards the tree inventory, we have the inventory in 2015, and it is corrected also in terms of a sampling. We had a sampling of 5% of the blocks. We counted and estimated that error. We have a high reliability in terms of number of trees and fruit per tree. The other two, droppage rate and weight, we follow up on this with 1,000 samples to estimate the actual droppage rate and the growth of fruit weight in this crop, and then every 3 or 4 months we have a new estimate. Let's say that we have the initial estimate or forecast, and in September another re-estimate, in December and February, based on the growth and the droppage rate. Okay? So this is what I had to tell you. Now I would like to ask Dr. Lorival Mônaco, Mr. Aires, Mr. Fava Neves, Mr. Vinicius Trombin, and the Statistical Area Coordinator, Professor Barbosa, to take their seats on the floor. Now we will have the Q&A session. And also the State Secretary, who will say a few words. We are open to questions. Roberto Young, considering the small amount of young trees, what can we expect from future crops, thinking of the average age of the grove, the average age of the citrus industry, because we have much less replenishment for this size of trees. We cannot analyze just 1 year. If you analyze in detail work that was done in our 2015 work, you observe that we used to plant around, in 2008 to 2010, 30 to 40,000 hectares per year. And this has decreased to less than 10,000 hectares. So the main factor that shows that the number of bearing trees has been decreasing are twofold. One, that is eradication, abandoned and eradicated groves. Now it's a little more stable. In 2016, we had the better prices, but even so, we have not resumed the past figures. So something that was not announced here, and the State Secretariat showed us, this year we are planting the main varieties, except for the fresh fruit, 8.6 million plants, and resets 27%, and 63% are for renewal or expansion. So the citrus growing area has been decreasing. We have increased yield. We had great concern with greening, but we have been somewhat successful as compared to the world. But there is a decrease in terms of production, bearing and non-bearing areas. Any other question? José Antônio Quadri from the Campinas Agronomic Institute. I'd like to ask Professor Barbosa, since we work with statistics, it's something tricky. I noticed two things. When you introduce the 300 some new resets, it led to a high reduction of variance in relation to the adult growths. Have you weighed this variation, since it brought in a much smaller variation in terms of significant number of trees? Did you weigh the variance? When we stratified with resets, we started working with 6 age brackets. Initially, we only had 3. 1, 2, 3. From 3 to 5, 6 to 10, and after 10, third group. So we stratified 1,200 samples. We had a 2% error in average. When we had the 6 age categories, when you create a new stratum, it doesn't influence from one to another. You have the average for that stratum and the variance for that stratum. The effect of stratum is weighed by the number of trees of that block. If you have a reset 1-year-old in a 3-year-old block, this reset will have shadows and other factors that will lead it to produce less. So its average is much lower. But this average is weighed by the number of trees of that stratum. It will reduce the number of fruit, but you have a certain number of trees of that kind. In terms of sampling theory, this is a stratified sampling method. Everything is applied here. It's not just calculating an average. You have weighed average and variance, but from one stratum to another, you have a weighed average. If you have 12 regions, 6 age categories. When I calculate the average of Hamelin variety, I will weigh the number of trees of each region in each of the 6 varieties. So it's weighed by 72. So there was this stratification.
A ideia é melhorar o método.
Because the idea is to improve the sampling method. When you create more strata and it creates a large effect on the number of fruits, the average is much more reliable. Because we clearly see that the variation coefficient is very high, it is almost 48% considering the total of fruit per plant. You are considering the standard deviation as a percentage of the average, but we have to work with the general average. But from one plant to another is as you mentioned. But by the population you showed, let's say 743 fruit per average with 360 standard deviation. It's not a small variation. That's why we need 2,500 samples. Otherwise, I could work with just 1,000. Just as a suggestion, so statistics is based on probability. There is a probability that this true average is within these two standard deviations with 95% percentage. When you announce this number, the estimate will vary between -2 or +2. So the error is 1.9%. The confidence level is 364 minus 1.9% of 364, which will give the lower limit and higher limit. Okay, let's say 2%. 2% of 364 is 7 million boxes above or below.
Mais alguma pergunta?
Any other question? A question to Marcos Fava. My name is also Marco. With this number regarding more than 120 million over the previous crop, do you think the juice inventories will be balanced? Thanks for your question and congratulations for all this joint work of citrus growers, secretariat, and industry. And the number that has been presented should not interfere negatively on the prices because it will not be able to replenish inventories that will no longer exist by mid-year. So I will repeat the answer given last year. And I was right because the conjuncture was excellent, but the deteriorated structure cannot allow us go above 400 million boxes. And also in the participation agreement. Since we have a structure that has been deteriorating, we no longer have bumper crops. So this number should not affect prices received both by growers and by the industries. Good morning, everybody. Frauzo Luiz Sanchez, Vice Mayor of Ibitinga. Not a question, but just a congratulations to Fundecitrus, to Juliano, Monaco, with this marvelous work, and each year acquiring a greater trust and reliability with Marquestrat and Funesp. And the crop estimate, it was just like a big soap opera. And year after year, we have greater trust and respectability in terms of crop estimates. So congratulations for your work, and also the work by the State Secretariat, by Mr. Jardim, by altering the citrus canker legislation. Congratulations to Fundecitrus, Marquestrat, and Secretary Jardim, who is quite an active secretary, and being present here to give greater support to this event. All the data were presented in a brilliant manner. Congratulations to everybody. Frauzio, I'd like to thank your congratulations. It's difficult and serious work by all those present here. It's a testimonial that Brazilian citrus industry and citrus growing area has been praised, and I will present this next June. And other countries are using Brazilian citrus industry and growers as a benchmark. And today we have a much more integrated group and well coordinated in the public sector, and this dynamic and working capacity, and our secretary pays justice to his name, Jardim, which means garden. So he is highly involved with this, and he has been praised by all those people present at the Agri-Show fair last week, and he has been a champion for our sector, and congratulations to Arnaldo Jardim, Secretary. Fundecitrus, as always, is a base of pride for us, and this has been repeatedly acknowledged by everybody. Just a comment, and we cannot forget to have this colleague here, Vinicius, and I received the information at 6 a.m. And so they spent overnight, and this is a consequence of this agreement, that this figure will only be released early in the morning of today. So Dr. Monaco has the last word, and so this final number was only finalized 1 hour ago. And so my congratulations to Vinicius. Now I would like to hand the floor to Dr. Monaco and then Secretary. All the information was given. I insist on our concern, a serious, confidential, careful work, but even more important, thanks to citrus growers that are financing this work. But Fundecitrus right now started adopting a somewhat differentiated policy. Today we are discussing the citrus production chain as a whole to take advantage of what we have in the industrial areas, also for lemon, for fresh fruit. And this is the dimension we want to assign to this production chain, which will always depend on this environment. We have never had this positive relationship between grower and transforming industry and the state, and the presence of the secretary is a clear evidence of this, because historically the secretariat has did and has done, but now we have another procedure where growers are responsible for generating data, and the most important aspect is when we started in the first year, 10 to 15% would not let the Fundecitrus enter their farms. Today, this is no longer a problem. So the reliability was conquered in these last 10 years. I would like to thank for your presence. And next year, new information, and now we are hiring a new surveying, aerial surveying program system, and also the effort by the secretary in setting up the new legislation of eradication. We took 3 or 4 years to solve this, and so this is a reason why we are quite satisfied. And now the floor to the secretary. So, Monaco, thank you very much. So, a big compliment from Governor Alckmin, and he knows the importance of citrus growing industry for the state of São Paulo in terms of resources, in terms of what this involves in terms of the São Paulo state area, and also generation of jobs, the employability. He was also agricultural secretary, Monaco Roberto, and also all the teams and all the members of Fundecitrus, Juliano, and also the whole technical committee, my dear Marcos Fava Neves, Vinicius, Professor José Carlos Barbosa, the excellent work, not only with the forecast for the crop, but in general, how the whole production chain thinks. All the friends are here, so Citrus, Flávio Viegas, and compliment Frauzio, because he is a vice mayor. He's also a member of the industry chamber, and I will not talk about all the friends here, and also Diego Fortes, because he's now the chair of our citrus growing chamber. Fernando Curi, state representative, that has helped us. And now we have an investigation committee, which is good to debate, but also to raise many misunderstandings. And so this is a good time for us to think about our industry and always aiming at the right target. The Agriculture Secretariat has all the members, Amorim, with the sectorial chamber, which has been very actively working. Fernando Buchara, coordinator of Animal and Plant Defense, and also helped by Tomazella, a great friend and companion and a specialist. So I would like to congratulate for your credibility. Very few segments have a crop forecast system as you have now. This is of fundamental importance for business. This precludes, hasty selling that might affect prices, and this is being increasingly been improved. I don't know whether my variance is here or there, but I know that these components are being steadily improved, and I would just like to mention three things. First, citrus growing industry is involved in agriculture, so three warnings. First, sustainability. This is a commitment. You have been careful in this regard, but still have to face misunderstandings about sustainability. Now we have the CARF, and we have interacted with the survey, and I insist on sustaining this. There is still in the urban areas a vision of predatory agricultural activity, a problem that we will have to face now, the spraying by aircraft, that there is a movement against this. Well, we have to defend science instead of having religions or being against everything or being in favor of everything, to have criteria that show your care in terms of your operation. Second, innovation. You have been concerned and have seen this. I have talked with Lorival Juliano. I thank you for this permanent search for innovation, both in terms of new cultivars and also in terms of technology, productivity, and I would like to compliment you and to get a closer relationship with you. Third aspect is macroeconomic conditions. I could talk about consumption, purchasing power crisis, but there is a question regarding insurance. Insurance must be improved. The coverage area of insurance is highly localized. Now we have made some attempts due to citrus canker, and we would like to leave this as a future goal. So it changes the stage at which you plan your crop. So we are celebrating our crop, and this debate of the questions, for instance, the profile of the grove, it cannot be an old grove. How are we going to replenish? At what rate? And there is a very important sign, which is how the abandoned area declined. I know that Celso is reminding me. So Celso is the executive director of Ouro Plana. So he asked a question on the wake of your question too. So Roberto, it was a quick answer to the economic reason. When you have old groves that are reactivated, and so planting is also linked to this, but you can create better conditions. See, we will have a specific meeting with the committee board about greening, which is a strategic issue in terms of future, and we will keep working with this. And just like to remind you, in the advance of the citrus canker rooster survey, I would like to congratulate you because you did that presentation at PESP where we had this assessment of the joint work that we have done since Xylella fastidiosa until today, that allowed us to maintain these efforts. And at our citrus development center, the maintaining of our citrus germplasm bank, and even overcoming some ideological issues. And we are implementing this bank, this germplasm bank, and we will once again have the citrus growing week in June from June 5 to 8. And a word to summarize this is we have decreased our distance. So we have had greater approach in terms of defense of research institutes, sectorial chambers. We were out of sync, each one playing in one direction. If I were to congratulate one issue, we are closer, and I think the sector gains with this. We have a guideline for this. We want our crops to be in greater sync in terms of forecast, in terms of defense. Is not a punishing but a guiding committee, and also the legislation like the mitigation system is working at full scale, and this will be dealt with the Citriculture Committee at the Agricultural Secretariat. And thank you very much for the excellent work you have, and the São Paulo population thanks you for that. In order for this result to be published, many have endeavored their efforts, to whom we owe our sincere thanks. Among them, the citrus producers that opened the gates to their farms and allowed their groves to be included in the samplings necessary for the whole process. Another contribution that stands out comes from the São Paulo State Agriculture and Supply Department by supplying information about the number of planted seedlings in the citrus growing areas, and also the incredible performance of the members of the technical committee donating their time and knowledge for this research, and also the excellent efforts of Fundecitrus that endeavored to meet the deadlines and the tasks within the highest quality standard. Finally, our thanks to Fundecitrus Board of Directors for being the greatest champions of this survey and acting as drivers to strengthen all this citrus growing area, bringing transparency and reliable information to the whole citrus growing chain. And we have the honor to announce here Vinicius working there. He has already inserted into the website the executive summary both in Portuguese and English, so everybody can check. And the full report of PES for 2017 and 2018, the report will be available on Friday, www.fundecitrus.com.br, and also visit the page that celebrates the 40th anniversary of Fundecitrus and all the facts that have happened. And we would like to all your presence, and thank you very much. Have a very good day. Muito bem.